signed in at the back entrance of the room. What we'll do is we're going to we'll pull up every agenda. We'll hear from everyone presenting on that, whether you're for or opposed. Come up, you'll come to the podium, state your name and address, and then you can speak. The board will, after we hear everything, we will have a recess. We usually make most of our decisions this evening. If we don't, you can call the zoning office tomorrow after 8:30 if you don't wish to stay. They do need to be made within 45 days, so you do have a little bit of time, but we usually do try to make them this evening. I'd ask that everyone please stand to be sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please answer, I do.
I do.
Thank you. The first appeal is 26-16, Thomas J. Weiss for property located at 7072 Schultz Road, seeking a height variance for an accessory structure in the CR Conservation Residential District.
Now, before we get started, we only have 2 board members present, so our full complement is 3. If there is a tie vote between the 2 board members, then it's a deemed denial of any variance request or special exception. So that goes for your application as well as all the other applications tonight. So I just want to ask you, are you okay proceeding, understanding that?
I believe so.
Okay. Thanks.
I guess I'll figure that out. I won't be if it gets denied, but yeah, I'm simply seeking to build a storage
Sorry,
garage.
if you could state your name and address first.
I'm sorry, Thomas Weiss, 7250 Schultz Road, Erie, PA.
Thank you.
I seek to build a storage garage on my property. The height variance is to accommodate plans that will complement my home with the same type of roof peak. And I'm also in a very unique situation where my property straddles the Mill Creek and Summit line. My home is actually in Summit Township, but the piece of property I wish to build on is in Mill Creek Township. The piece I have in Mill Creek is the only piece that is really suitable for the construction of a barn, a garage. The rest of my land is very hilly, and most of it is actually in a stream bed, which I certainly can't build in that. So for those reasons, I was hoping I could get the variance and move forward with the storage facility.
And the building is how tall?
24 feet.
24 feet, so by 4 feet. Jeremy, do you have any question if it was one parcel?
So, and this is more of a question, I guess, zoning-wise. Because of the nature of the parcel, there's the one parcel with the principal dwelling on it in Summit, and then the proposed accessory structure on the adjoining, I guess, portion of the same integral lot in Mill Creek, that still falls under the category of an accessory structure?
Yes, it is one lot. It just happens to cross a municipal line.
So regardless of whether the residence sits in one township and then the accessory structures on the other, doesn't matter from?
Correct, yeah, as long as it's one integral parcel, there would be no zoning issues.
It is one integral parcel. He probably receives 2 tax bills even though it's one parcel.
I do.
Correct, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you mentioned the reason for doing this as a taller building is I see you've got a quite large garage door on one part and then to match the aesthetic of the house.
Correct.
Okay, have you talked to any of your neighbors around you about this?
I did. I spoke to one neighbor this morning who he asked me if he needed to come, and I said, well, if you want to oppose me, then I guess you should come, but
Okay,
he's not here.
okay.
I actually spoke to another future neighbor who's currently building, received a variance on for an accessory structure a year ago, and he didn't have any difficulty with it either.
Okay. You have anything, Charles?
No, I have no questions.
Okay. I don't think we have anything else for you right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this? Okay, moving on. We have Appeal 26-17, Joseph Caulfield for property located at 329 Forest Run Drive, seeking a dimensional variance to exceed the maximum square footage for an in-law apartment and a special exemption for an in-law apartment in the R1 single-family residential district.
Good afternoon, or good evening rather. Joe Caulfield, 329 Forest Run, Erie, PA. Here tonight requesting, I guess, two separate exceptions, one for size and one for an in-law suite. The reason is that I have kind of a large family. I have 7 children. My wife and I just welcomed twins in May, and her father has a cancer diagnosis. So they are selling their home in State College. They do winter in Florida, but they are hoping to stay with us basically on a seasonal basis for the rest of his life, and maybe more than seasonal as his disease progresses. We had reached that agreement last summer, and then in the fall, my wife and I found out that we were expecting twins. So that sort of makes the addition more of a necessity, just so we can accommodate my in-laws as well as all of our children. The lot that we have is just over an acre, relatively private in the back, and the addition is to go in the back of our additional garage, which is attached to the house. Now, the reason we're requesting the size variance is we want to make sure that everything within that in-law suite is fully accessible should we need wheelchairs, hospital beds, etc., as they age and as potentially the disease progresses. So we understand that we need some special permission from the board, but we believe under these circumstances, wanting to be there for family, wanting to step up and welcome them, but also needing to take care of our own children, we'd request that these exemptions be granted, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I also have some extra copies of the drawings, if that's helpful.
I think we've got those in our packet, so I think we're
Very
good
good.
there. When it comes to special exception, just want to run down through list with you.
Sure.
So must be owner occupied, that is the case?
Yes.
Okay. So the problem here is that it's exceeding the 720 square feet because it is 960 square feet. And you mentioned the reasoning for that
Yeah.
is accessibility and having enough room.
Correct.
And then also if we go to the plans, can answer the next one for us. It says, the next one, only one in-law apartment, so I'm assuming there's not another in-law apartment on the home right now?
There is not, correct.
Okay. No more than 2 bedrooms. The plans clearly show 1
The
bedroom.
plan is for one
correct?
bedroom, correct.
May be located only within the primary dwelling, so it's attached to your primary dwelling through the garage, is
That's right.
that right? Shall be fully architecturally integrated.
The plan is to match everything on the exterior to the
Okay.
existing home.
Meets all Pennsylvania construction code requirements, so you're going to be pulling building permits and doing all that.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And the occupancy by persons other than the in-laws is prohibited, so it would have to be, a family member who would be there,
Yep.
not become a rental.
We certainly don't intend to rent it to anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Charles, do you have any?
I don't, no.
Jeremy? Okay, thank you.
I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone in the audience like to speak on this?
Mark Pellegrino. I live at 201 Edgewater Circle, Erie. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mark Pellegrino. I'm here with my wife Kylie tonight. We live at 201 Edgewater Circle. We live directly next door to the Caulfield's residence of 329 Forest Run Drive. 21 years ago, we invested in Mill Creek Township when we built our home on Edgewater. We chose the Reserve at Creek's Edge subdivision back then because it fulfilled what we were looking for in property. At least 1 acre or larger lot, wooded, and a private backyard. We did not want a postage stamp size lot with neighbors right on top of us, or your backyard that was like being in a fishbowl. When we received the letter from the zoning office notifying us that Caulfields were seeking a zoning variance for an in-law apartment, we were a bit surprised. Somewhere around the 2008-2009 timeframe, the original homeowners of 329 converted the entire basement into an in-law apartment, complete with a large full kitchen, bath, fully finished. So we came to the zoning office the other week to look over the proposed plans for the new in-law apartment. The 24 by 40 layout will be directly overlooking and removing any privacy we have in our immediate backyard. Now, in 2013, the second homeowners of 329 added on a second attached garage to the home, roughly 30 by 32 in size, because the original 22 by 36 three-car attached garage was not large enough for their needs. We're wondering, could either of these attached garages be converted into an in-law apartment without the need to increase the footprint of the home? The original 22 by 36 garage would give them 792 square feet, or the second 30 by 32 garage would give them 960 square feet, the same as the proposed addition. We would like to know if these options have been considered. Given that the home already has an in-law apartment in the basement, either of the two attached garages could be converted into an apartment. The proposed addition of the 960 square foot is 25% over the 720 square foot allowed. We would have no problem with the proposed addition if only one change was made to the plans. That would be to move the egress window in the bedroom from the west wall, which would be looking directly into our immediate backyard, to the south wall and have no windows at all on the west wall of the bedroom. And then also we'd like to know what the stormwater removal plans are for the addition. That's all I have.
Mr. Caulfield, please come back up. So from a stormwater management perspective, I mean, you have to go through the township to get the permit, so that's going to be baked in. They're going
Right.
to handle that outside of this, so nothing we can really do differently on that. That's a mandate that you can't work your way around, you know that.
Absolutely.
As far as his comment on the bedroom window, do you have any thoughts on that?
I just asked the contractor, and he said absolutely we can move it, so we'll do that.
Okay, so you'll agree
Yep.
to move that egress window to the back? wall?
Absolutely. Yeah, we certainly don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, so we
Okay.
can definitely move the window.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pellegrino, please come back up real quick. Just wanted to state to you, that the stormwater management, the township has things in place that has to be taken care of 100%.
Okay. Yeah, we just wanted to make sure because their property is about 8 feet above grade and it grades towards ours, and
Sure.
when it rains, it gets wet
Yeah,
as it
they
is.
cannot impact a
That's fine.
downstream neighbor, and then you're satisfied with that window?
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. No
Okay,
problems at all.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on this? Okay.
Matthew Waldinger, 3608 West 26th Street. I'm Director of Planning and Development. I just wanted to clarify some of the testimony that we just heard. I think we heard it claimed that there was already an in-law apartment existing in the structure, and since the regulations say you're only allowed to have one, I just wanted to know if that could be clarified.
Okay, we can, could you please come back up? Is there an existing in-law apartment in the basement?
There's not, Your Honor. There's a half bath and there's a wet bar.
Okay,
But to be honest, the first thing we considered was making an in-law suite in the basement, but because of accessibility,
Sure.
our only option was to put in essentially a chair lift, and we were concerned that would take up too much space in the main stairwell, and so that's why we abandoned that idea. There is a half bath down there, but not a full bath,
okay,
and so
okay,
I'm not sure how it got categorized when it was built, but there is a basement, and it's a finished basement, but
Yeah.
half bath and a wet bar.
okay, thank you. Okay, appeal number 26-18, Erie City Mission for property located at 1553 East Grandview Boulevard, seeking a special exception for the adaptive reuse of a non-residential structure in the R1 Single Family Residential District.
And I have to excuse myself, I do have a conflict. My law firm does represent the Erie City Mission from time to time, so. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jim Toohey, attorney for Erie City Mission.
Brian
Brian.
Johansson, CEO of the Erie City Mission.
Your address, Brian?
1017 Front Street, Erie, PA.
Okay. Threshold question, solicitor, if you don't mind. 1-1, if that result came forward, would we be able to represent a month from now, or is that the one shot at this?
My understanding is no.
That would be my understanding as well.
Okay.
My understanding is decisions for the NPC, it's like you come back in a year, perhaps.
Right. Okay. Could we have a minute?
Absolutely.
All right. Follow-up inquiry. If we decided to go back a month, we could also end up with 2, correct, a month from now?
That is a potential.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to proceed.
Okay.
We like our position here this evening, and we're excited to present it and excited to get going with things if things turn in the direction that we would like them to. Again, Jim Toohey, we submitted a fairly comprehensive application package. So in some respects, I'll defer to the two of you in terms of what detail you'll need from me this evening. But I do want to make an opening statement in support, and then also to at least quickly check a box or two. The Erie City Mission recognized a pretty blatant need in our community, and it's one to provide facilities, we call it a haven, that will support women and children in crisis. Some efforts, some organizations in town are committed to that, but the need is far greater beyond what is currently being provided. And Mill Creek also was smart enough to recognize an issue from a planning and zoning perspective. And it was that we have less kids, we have less people, and as a consequence, schools were going to close, public and private. Other buildings too, but I have to imagine that schools are the biggest target. Because once they're vacant and not operating, you've got large parcels of land with significantly sized buildings that don't easily reprogram into another use. So Mill Creek was smart enough to have added some provision to the zoning code that allows for adaptive reuse of non-residential structures. And we hope that we're presenting the optimal circumstance for those two issues to align and be addressed here. And that's why we're here this evening. A little bit of background without getting into all the detail, but Erie City Mission has been looking for over a year, I believe, for 2 years, for a location for women and children crisis haven, if you will. And of course, Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church up in East Grandview, not church but school, has been closed since 2017. And it hasn't found a proper reuse. Back in late 2025, Our Lady of Mount Carmel and Erie, the mission, they were connected to one another, and it was a good fit. And good discussions followed, leading to a purchase and sale agreement that was signed on February 8th of 2026. Of course, there was a contingency for this zoning approval. On March 17th of 2026, I, on behalf of the mission, submitted a request for a preliminary opinion to the zoning officer at the time, Matt Puz, and on April 16th of 26, he issued his opinion that is, of course, on the file and a public record. There were a couple hoops we had to jump through, and I won't go through all of it, but ultimately, his determination was that the intended use as a haven for women and children in crisis qualifies as an acceptable use under the adaptive reuse of non-residential structures section of the zoning ordinance. Subject, of course, now, because what we had to do is first verify that under adaptive reuse, those uses do apply to Erie City Mission and its intents. Matthew Puzz's determination supported that we do comply and fit within it, but now we're here for special exception, which we ultimately needed. And so there's two layers to that, right? One is community support for it. And from a community support perspective, we did include 12 letters of endorsement in the submission we presented to all of you. One of them was written by Father Larry Richards, who's the pastor of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which will continue as a parish operating next door, assuming we're also, after this, able to get subdivision approval of a division of the property. Additionally, there's been unwavering parish support. Father Larry and Our Lady of Mount Carmel collaboratively with the mission hosted a town hall on June 4. And I think about 80 people? 85 people showed at it. Combination of parishioners and the residents, bordering residents. Notice was submitted to everybody. And by the way, Attorney Wallen's here as well on behalf of the parish. Father Larry Richards couldn't be here tonight, or we'd all be blessed with his words of wisdom. But Attorney Wallen is back here. He did step up a moment ago. He is representing Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish and certainly will be here to answer any questions or to corroborate anything I'm presenting. But of the 85, no statements in opposition. It was a great meeting. There's been nothing but positive feedback. An effort to achieve feedback by the city mission throughout the process because they wanted to hear, they wanted to know, they wanted to be sure that it's the right place, but also engage the neighborhood because they think it's going to be a benefit for everybody there. And so, of course, to the technical, it is our position that the city mission's intended use satisfies each of the 10 criteria that are set forth in the ordinance, specifically section 145-39 subsection D. We included those in our writing for the sanity of the audience this evening. I won't go on a point-by-point basis unless you think that'll provide benefit for the record.
I think for the record, we need to briefly go down through those.
Then let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is an 11th item, but that 11th item is for the hearing board, right? In response, point 11 of the 11 that were raised. I'll try to take us through an abbreviated tour, but there are 10.
So I'll just state for the record.
Please.
That basically, there are specific criteria for use. An applicant for this use on special exception must establish that the application satisfies all the specific criteria for use. So
Thank
you
you.
start with number 1.
Yeah. Would you like me to read them out or summarize? You like me reading them out, Bob?
Summarization
Okay,
is
fine.
Yeah.
The first is that the discontinued use must have been a permitted use, or at least legal nonconforming, in this case permitted. School is one of the permitted uses for that location, which we all probably could guess. As it relates to number 2, the proposed use had to meet one of the uses that's set forth in that section, which we feel there are 3 of them that are materially similar to it, which is the standard that we had to accomplish to receive the opinion letter in favor of the use. So that has essentially been satisfied through Matthew Puzz's review and is included in his preliminary opinion, which again is on file, and of course I can provide a copy if necessary. But to qualify, and I emphasize this in our written answer, the use need only be similar to and compatible with these uses. And we feel, again, that 3 of them satisfy that. And I can list: community center, continuing care facility, and daycare facility. Third, there's a requirement that a trip generation report be provided. David Laird and Associates did prepare one. We submitted it with our package. And in a quick summary statement, quote, they concluded that from a transportation and trip generation standpoint, the proposed use is expected to operate compatibly with the surrounding area and with less overall traffic intensity than the historic school use. Number 4, the applicant must satisfy stormwater management, subdivision, and land development regulations. Of course, on the subdivision and land development side, we are going to be subdividing it, so we will be subject to that scrutiny and need to satisfy it in order to get approved there. We're confident we will. Stormwater management, of course, there's going to be actually some construction work done. It's not going to be to expand the perimeter. That's going to be relevant for another answer in the 10. But they fully intend, I guess that's the best we can offer in the moment, that they'll need to get permits, comply with the stormwater management requirements. That intention is certainly there, and I put it in writing. Okay, the next would be that it's not open to the public from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I guess it's a preliminary matter. Program participants are only going to be accepted by referral, so you're not driving up and making your case. And so it won't be generally open to the public from 8 to 6, except for, as we put it, occasional irregular events that might be hosted there, but they won't be consistent. Next, the project cannot expand the footprint or the height of the facility, and their intended construction will do neither of those. Next, the exterior must be preserved to be compatible with adjacent residential. That is their intent. I expressed it in writing and do so again here today. Like any school, the residential isn't right next door to it. You might not even connect the need to, for there to be a consistency in look, but nonetheless, they don't have any significant desires to change the look of the facility and or its incompatibility or cause an incompatibility with the neighboring properties. Drive-through facility will not apply to ECM's intended use, so that's the next one, that there can't be a drive-through. That's point 8. They will not have any drive-through ability or facility. Naturally, it won't flow from what they're doing there. 9, the traffic must be directed solely toward the nearest collector street. The intention is to continue to use the same driveway that currently provides access to the church and the school. It comes off East Grandview. It's a pretty decent length. I mean, it's got to be, 100 yards long, or easy. So it sets the school and the church back from East Grandview and creates a distance from the surrounding residential properties too. They intend to use it. It might not be part of the new parcel that ECM will be purchasing, but if that's the case, we've already built in the obligation for the two sides to reach agreement on an easement over the roadway. And also, even if we don't include that in our parcel, which right now it's not intended to be, we may be including an adjacent vacant residential lot for continued access in case we needed to construct our own access way down the road. And then finally, 10, mixed uses may be permitted. To the extent that our use does overlap, I suggested at the front end that there's 3 different uses under this section that could apply to it. To the extent that they do overlap, we do request mixed use approval, and again, recognizing that Matthew Puz found there was a good connection between our use in 3 of those uses. That's it for my statement.
Okay.
I know that Brian intended to say a couple words about Erie City Mission's mission and what it intends to do there, and I'll hand the mic over to Brian.
Good evening. Just a couple comments on behalf of the board and myself. So we thank you. It's an honor to present to you. Quick comments. So first, let's look at the what, why, and how. So what Erie City Mission is attempting to purchase and completely renovate the Our Lady of Mount Carmel School. The potential purchase of the school is in line with our strategic plan. In October 24, the board unanimously approved an objective to build by a facility, and we've been searching since. The support of Our Lady of Mount Carmel School and the community and staff and the board are overwhelmingly positive, and I've been encouraged by that as the leader. We did hold a town hall meeting, as Jim mentioned, really to create transparency. We sent out 2,000 invitations. We had 85 folks show up. There was a good back and forth questions, but overall, there was a really wonderful response from them, and everyone prefaced their question with, "We love this idea, tell me about this." So I really was encouraged by that. We have had some incredible financial support from the private sector. Most of the money that's going to go into the purchase and renovation is from the private sector, and we are working with a local architect. Jason is here with us to design this project. So why 29% of homelessness, women and children nationally, is 29% of them are women and children. That's a hard number to wrap our head around. The mission regularly has women and mothers and children brought to us. They wander into our campus looking for help. And at this point, the mission only has a few beds for women. We don't have a lot of beds for men, but not a lot of beds, or if any beds, for emergency care for women. Women can be in crisis for many reasons: domestic violence, economic issues, addiction, trafficking. We look at the needs of Erie County. There are limited beds in Erie County for women and children in crisis. We're working with some wonderful organizations locally: Mercy Center for Women, Erie Dawn, Women's Care Center, the YMCA, and Safety Net. In talking to Jenny Haggerty at the Mercy Center for Women, she has 17 units and 70 women on her waiting list, just to kind of give you a perspective of the need. Women will be able to stay as long as it takes to get them stable. So it could be anywhere from 3 months to a year or further, depending on what the needs of that young family is. In some cases, it could take up to more than a year, depending on what they need. So how? We intend to complete the renovation and the facility to eventually house 70 women and children. That's our goal. And the children in crisis, we would build classrooms, childcare, college-style rooms, family units with bathrooms and kitchens, laundry, recreation in the courtyard. A lot of people don't know it's like a donut, so there's a giant courtyard in the middle. We would make that into a playground for the kids. We would do this in phases. So the first phase is going to address code issues. So we need a sprinkler system and all the other things that need to happen. And then other phases in renovating different pieces of the project. It's our hope that in 18 months to 2 years, we'll be able to start serving women, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that building. Once up and running, we will be staffed 24/7 with trained staff and volunteers. We have a fleet of vehicles that would be transporting the women and children to medical appointments, other appointments that they have. We'll be providing educational services, GED, job training, and placement. But as Jim said earlier, there will be no public services. Like at our downtown campus, we have meals and a pantry. Here, they will only be serving women and children who are referred to us by Mercy Center for Women or Erie Dawn. So it's not open to the public. That's kind of the way we're putting that. Our overall goal is to meet a woman and her children where they are in crisis, love them into independence and stability. We see a positive measurement of that. Last year, we helped 103 people gain employment at the mission, and 170 people were put into their own housing. To us, that's success, putting people back into independence, and that's our goal. It's not our goal to warehouse people forever. It's our goal to help them move forward in their life. So I thank you for this opportunity to present, and we're calling this the Haven for Women and Children. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, following on one last point, because we might have alluded to it, but weren't expressing it. It's hard to say that the mission of Erie City Mission doesn't directly align with the mission of the parish that's right next door and that formerly would have owned this space, and that they align, they'll support one another. The parish is excited for the potential that some of the people that stay there could be added to their parish community. And Erie City Mission is excited for connecting with those parishioners and giving them an opportunity to serve and collaborate. So it really is a perfect match. So in sum, we really feel good about what we're proposing here today. There are a couple of community needs, women and children support, as well as reuse of these schools that are being satisfied here. And the community in that area, and by and large, has been roundly behind this. And finally, of course, we feel confident we satisfy those 10 requirements, and we hope that we get a positive result today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're open for questions. We have our architect here, we have our board, some of our board here, and myself and Jim, if you have any questions for us.
Sure. So, being a special exception, it really comes down to those 10 criteria. which I think you presented well. I understand that completely. So I want to give a chance for the township, if they have any, township, anything on this one?
Township has nothing further.
Okay, great. We'll open it up to the audience, see what is there, and then we may bring you back up if we have any questions.
Thank you.
Okay, if anyone from the audience would like to come up, one at a time, just make sure, please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Tim Clan. I have owned a business for 26 years adjacent to the property. The address is 4969 Wattsburg Road. We share the entire rear property line with Mount Carmel. We're very familiar with the facility. We've done some work there, and my own child has attended there. We're not here to oppose, first of all, women and children in crisis. We support the Erie City Mission and their intent. However, we do need to keep in mind this is an R1 single-family residential zoning district. A neighbor and I have not received some information regarding security or other aspects. We may just not have been sent that, but I at least want to bring that up to make sure the board has considered that. I don't argue with Matthew Putz's preliminary ruling, but that is preliminary and saying whether the redistricting or rezoning may be a complementary use to that designation. The adaptive reuse is to allow limited low-impact uses, such as community centers, continuing care, that are compatible with a residential neighborhood. There's some uncertainty whether a long-term transient shelter far exceeds that. The board has the ability to deny the application because it's inconsistent with the adaptive reuse, or even impose security or other conditions. A neighbor and I discussed this, that because they own an adjacent home, I own an adjacent business property, there's some attractive nuisances nearby that may pose a security concern or liability. There's a swimming pool, playground equipment, heavy equipment, open areas, and cliffs that could cause an issue to either residents or their children who, while they may be served their good at the facility, they may not always want to be there. They may decide to wander. There also could be an abusive spouse or former boyfriend that caused that family to be in the facility of needing assistance from the mission or the shelter that may also try to gain access or revisit and re-engage with their partners. So I'd like to say, if the board decides to approve the application, we'd like to hear you imposing additional conditions that other zoning boards have imposed on similar projects. Opaque fencing on all adjacent property lines to businesses and landscaping and other screening. A 24/7 on-site professional security with an operations plan, and any other security measures that you would see fit or find from other zoning boards have done. One other reason that this may be important, and the board may have considered this, and the township may have considered this, is that there's no police station nearby, so any additional resource or demands that the township has would have to be accommodated or dealt with. Police response to our facility, when we've had an alarm or any other type of an issue, we've had good service from the township, but it is delayed, and it's always told to us that the reason that it's 20 or 30 minutes response instead of immediate is just because of the location of how spread out Mill Creek is. So that's what I had to say and comment on. So I don't know if you have any questions for me.
So you're saying that you're not in opposition, but that you have security concerns. Is that a good summarization?
Yes, I'd ask that if the board considers that the ruling on the preliminary ruling is done correctly, and that you'd have no other reasons on the formal reasons, the technical reasons to deny, that you would then consider imposing those security restrictions and requirements to the project, especially the fencing along the perimeter between the neighboring.
Okay. One thing, this is a little bit different being a special exception versus a variance. When you mention a variance in conditions, being a special exception is a little bit different. We have to basically rule if they meet the criteria.
Okay. Yeah, I may have misspoke saying
But just-
variance, but
just so you
it's just a
understand.
consideration of,
We will ask their
If I-
response to this. Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to clarify, there were a couple comments made relative that this was a rezoning. This is not a rezoning. And then in addition, the determination that Mr. Puz made that was advertised, and there was a period of time for an individual to challenge that determination, and that period has lapsed. So there is no ability for the board, at least in the township's position, that you can challenge his determination. So that use has already been determined to be permitted, provided they meet the criteria.
Right, so in a variance situation, when someone asks for a variance, it's a little bit different with conditions. Here, we're trying to ensure that the 10 criteria are met, so it's a little bit different, just so you understand. That being said, I do hear your concerns, and I will ask for Mr. Tui's response to them.
Okay, just as a follow-up, we spoke to Matthew Putz before the original hearing, and because there was a $1,000 fee to formally oppose that and say that he did his job wrong and saying that it meets those conditions, then that's when he encouraged us to attend the public hearing and give public comment on it to yourself and the other board members.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Jim, you have any response to?
I believe what I was hearing is, where I was going to direct, is just that it's a kind of a, from my understanding, a checklist that we have to run through. Of course, public support is something that the city mission finds very important, but beyond that, we hope that we've adequately addressed the 10 items. I know
Yeah,
Brian wanted to have
I
a
mean,
comment.
At the end of the day, we want to be good neighbors. We try to demonstrate that by sending out invitations to come to a town hall. If there are issues of fencing, we can talk about that, and we're happy to figure out what that looks like and come to a compromise. As far as security, I'm not going to be hiring armed security guards, but I will have round-the-clock managers, social workers, caseworkers who are working with these folks, checking them in and out. In fact, the kids are not going to be out running the property. They'll be in the courtyard. I mean, that's what we like about the property, is it creates a safe environment for these kids to play without them getting lost on the property. So again, we want to be very good neighbors, so.
That's why I wanted you to come up, is exactly that we're here to talk about the 10 criteria, but I know being a
Yep.
good neighbor is important to you, so I wanted to give you a chance to
Absolutely.
respond
Thank
to
you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Do you have anything you need to bring up?
If I can get clarification from Attorney Tui, maybe just, I was looking at your March 17th letter, and it details phase 1, 2, and 3. In phase 3, actually, part A, says the new security office will be built at the main school entrance. Maybe that's something that you could talk about that would help maintain that.
So what that's referring to is at our other facilities, we have a kind of a main entrance for the facility, and at that, we have a desk where people check in and check out. We're not sure exactly what that's going to look like when you come into the school. There's an area on the right, which might be into that, but probably the idea of a security booth is not really accurate to what I'm talking about. It's more like a desk where people check in and check out, sign in and sign out, things like that.
Okay.
Anything further?
I mean, do you have any, I guess not to berate, but this is, I mean, you're going to have women who are from domestic violence situations.
Correct.
So you want to make sure they maintain protected as well as the
Correct.
kids. Is there any talk about video surveillance?
Yep,
system?
absolutely. So there'll be complete video surveillance around the school, plus the doors will be locked, and you need to be let in and buzzed in, so it's not wide open.
Okay, I think those details are
Yep.
important for the community.
For sure.
Appreciate that, answering those questions.
Good questions, thank you.
Okay, one last opportunity if there's anyone in the audience. Okay. Moving on to the final appeal tonight is Appeal 26-12, Guardian Towers for property located at 2301 Millfair Road, seeking a setback variance for a tower-based wireless communication facility and a special exception for a tower-based wireless community facility in the C2 Regional Commercial District.
Hello, my name is Ron Gaynor, president of Guardian Towers. I'd like to talk about why I'm here, how I got here, I guess. I'm a 30-year attorney telecom consultant, and there's a need to provide approved coverage in the airport area, Walmart, heavy commercial district. My clients want to improve coverage, so how we choose the tower is, first is we look for city or township-owned property to do a deal with the jurisdiction. In this case, the compost facility was in an area that was suitable for my clients. So probably over a year ago, we met with representatives, maybe 8 to 12 representatives at the site to choose a location. We wanted to be as close to the airport as possible because that's the coverage zone. So moving to the back of the compost facility, keeping it out of the way of operations, of the township operations, we think we found a really good site. We're trying to keep it to the border, where the Walmart border is, as close as possible. These towers, it's a monopole type tower that we're proposing. We got FAA approval at 155, I believe, and so we were initially going to propose a 150-foot tower, which was great. After we looked through more zoning regulations, we couldn't exceed a certain threshold, so we had to lower that tower due to zoning regs to 96 feet. So that's how we got the height of the tower. The position of it is mostly due to the terrain. As you go further west, away from that back property line, the elevation goes up of the ground. So our tower would go lower as we moved west. So we wanted to keep it as far to the property line as possible to make it useful for my clients. At this location, no trees would need to be removed, and that's important in the code. So we tried to keep that in our minds. And lastly, these towers, when we need a setback variance from a property line, oftentimes the discussion is these towers fall. We don't want to keep it on the property that it's going on. I want to assure you that these towers are designed to fall the top part down on itself. It doesn't fall like a tree, so it will not, if it were to fall, and it's very rare that these fall. We're talking hurricane type impact. If it were to fall, the top part of the tower, the monopole, would fall on the bottom part. And so there's no way, and these will be designed by professional engineers in Pennsylvania, that it would impact that property line. So those are all the reasons we chose this location. We have a lease in place with the township. We're very excited to get this business relationship going, and I can answer any questions.
Well, just to get some facts on, so required setback is 150 feet. This is going to be, is it 35 feet, the setback?
Setback. Mr. Puz, I believe it's, can you help me with that?
Yes, the current setback will be 35 foot being proposed. The tower at the new height is 126 foot would be the required setback. So it's a 91 foot setback variance.
Okay, and then also, so we have variance for each of those items, and then also it's a special exception.
Correct.
Okay. So let's run down through the special exception list here. Jimmy, do you want to read those off?
Is this, is your proposed construction site, is that on the southeast end of the composting facility?
I believe it would be the northeast section, right on the Walmart boundary line.
Right there.
So the tracks are to the north,
Okay.
Walmart's to the east. It's tucked in that back corner. We like it because there's, it's far away from residential, and so,
And it sits to the north of the Walmart, the rear, it sits to the north of the north edge of Walmart
correct.
as well.
And I apologize, I was indisposed in the back because of the conflict in the last appeal. And you're or
Ron Gaynor,
Ron
yeah,
Gaynor,
yeah.
okay. So we received your correspondence, thank you for that. In terms of the special exception, you want me to go through those?
Yeah, if we can go through all those.
So, just kind of following the outline of your letter and the regulations, I'm just going to kind of run through those requirements. There's obviously certain general requirements that must be met in terms of the special exception. And based on your correspondence, it sounds like all of those you plan to comply with, especially once if the variance is granted.
Correct.
And the burden of proof on those general requirements is not on you. So we're going to jump into those specific requirements. Do you want to go through those? Do you have the ordinance with you by
I do
chance?
not.
You do not?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll run through those. All right. So first things first, you must demonstrate that the antenna pole tower is the minimum height necessary for the service area.
Correct. While you were gone, we were proposing 150-foot, because our FAA came in at 154 or 5, and so we were going to go at the max limit. But due to other zoning regulations, we're lowering it to 96 feet, because we have to stay under a certain elevation with the tower and the land. So our coverage has been reduced significantly, but we still hit our target zone, which is the airport. And so it's going to improve coverage at the airport in the commercial area, Walmart, so it's still worth doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that service area now? I know that in the original application, I believe it was like 1.5.
Yeah, we're down to a mile,
Okay.
yeah. But as telecom markets are mature, that's still a great improvement. And so it's worth the investment.
Okay. And I guess, with respect to that service area, there's there's, I guess, no other equipment such as redos, repeaters, antennas that you can use in the area?
That's correct, yeah.
I did not see, one of the requirements was a propagation study. I did not see that. Is that something that's forthcoming?
I could submit that.
Okay.
We don't, the height of the towers was in flux, and so I didn't have, because we were going from 150, I have those propagation maps, but those are irrelevant now. So
Okay.
I have put in a request to get the maps at 96 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just need the propagation study for the, evidencing the need
Sure.
for the proposed tower.
Yep.
So if that's something that can be supplemented,
Yeah, as a condition of approval, or
Right.
I'd be happy to provide those.
all right. And then obviously, everything's going to comply with all state, federal regulations. Conserving aviation safety, we did see the report that you provided. I know that there was correspondence from the Erie International Airport. I'm not sure if that height played a factor, the height change played a factor in that.
No, I've been doing this for 30 years. When the FAA says you're approved at this height,
Right.
to me, that means we're safe.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was due to township regulations and working with the township board that I wanted to lower the height. I didn't want to ask for a height variance.
Okay.
Knowing that the airport didn't like it, and they had every opportunity to respond, because part of the FAA process is they provide the evidence, and then there's a period of time where they're supposed to get feedback from the airport. But I didn't want to try to get a height variance because I didn't want to go against the airport, you know.
Sure.
I want to work with, I'd like them to support this tower.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess one of the requirements is the granting of an easement if it's located on property with another principal use.
We have a fully signed lease with the township that has
Gives you the
easements.
access.
Access, yep,
Okay.
correct.
Engineering inspection, I saw that that's going to be a condition of the approval, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
If, hopefully we get approved here, then the engineers will do tower foundations, all stamped by a professional Pennsylvania engineer, and we'll submit for permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was one of the things, was the written certification, so that's going to be a condition of any approval by the board. Visual appearance and land use compatibility, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I just like the location because it's heavy commercial with the Walmart. You got the train tracks, you got existing trees that are blocking it. It seems an ideal spot for a tower. You know, oftentimes when we're in a park, we'll put shrubs or arborvitae around it. Really not needed here because there's tall, 40-foot trees around it. And you could see it from the Walmart parking lot, but,
Right.
heavy
So there's
commercial.
no additional screening that you're contemplating other than what's naturally there?
We're using what's naturally there.
Okay.
I mean, if this board felt it need to have slats in the fence or arborvitae around it, I think it's overkill, but we'd be happy to accommodate anything that you guys.
And I believe in your letter, it had indicated there was going to be slots and.
Yeah, that's typical,
Okay.
the green slats, so you
Okay.
can't see into the compound.
Sure. All right. One of the requirements is that you need to demonstrate evidence that the tower cannot be accommodated on any existing or approved structure, building, sited on land owned. So I'm assuming like in and around there, there's really nothing
Yeah.
else that you can,
If there was a township water tank or an existing tower, we would use that, but there is
but
not.
there isn't.
Right.
Okay. And then also you need to demonstrate that you contacted owners of other owners of tall structures, buildings, and towers within a quarter-mile radius of the site proposed, sought permission to install antenna on those structures, and were denied.
There wasn't any
There wasn't
suitable structures within that, yeah.
Okay. And then it looks like one of the other requirements is that you need to provide the township with a written commitment that allow other service providers to co-locate antennas or tower WCF where technically and economically feasible. Is that something that do you have anything in writing on that? I'm sure it's probably not provided for in the lease.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's in the lease, but that's the reason I'm here is
Okay.
to do that, so I could,
It says a written commitment.
Yeah.
So if that could
I
be
could
also
send an
be something-
email or,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And then we're under the maximum height. There's no historic buildings or districts in the area, correct?
Correct.
And then posting a sign readily visible, I guess at a readily visible location identifying the name and phone number of party to contact in the event of emergency, that's all gonna be on there?
That's correct.
Okay, and same thing with the lighting, the requirements in the ordinance?
Yep.
That's gonna be artificially lit lighting. Will be operated and maintained so as not to produce noise.
Correct.
You're gonna meet the insurance requirements.
Yes.
And provide proof of insurance.
Correct.
And then you mentioned that all the plans and drawings are going to be sealed and signed by a structural engineer.
Yep.
So that's covered. Financial security, you're aware of the requirements of the township, and those are going to be met.
Is that a bond of some kind?
It's just prior to the receipt of the zoning permit, financial security in the form of an accepted under the soldo, sufficient in the amount, so I assume it's going to be a bond, but I don't have the
It's,
soldo
it's,
ordinance.
it's standard in the
And it's
industry.
like 110% of the cost of removal.
Yep.
Okay. And the proposed tower site location is not located within 100 feet of utilities that are primarily located underground.
Correct, yeah.
And this is obviously in the C2 district, and this is a special exception within the C2 district pursuant to the regulations. Now, and I guess this is a question more for probably Matt, in terms of I guess my understanding is this property, there's two tax parcels, correct? And
Yes.
this is located on one of the tax parcels. Are we considering both tax parcels to be considered a lot? Is that, because one of the requirements, there's sole use on a lot, and then there's combined with another use. And I think under the application, I guess it was combined with another use was the position taken. I just want to make sure that that's the right.
So, excuse me, I listed both parcels on the application because the parcel that the proposed tower is located on, or will be located on, is technically landlocked, so that would be the access through it.
Okay.
So there's actually no other use on that parcel.
So we're considering it to be, I guess, one lot for purposes of functionality, is that? Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, for access.
Okay. And so then the combined with another use, the other use being the recycling facility adjacent, that's all part, that's why we're taking the position that's combined with another use, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then that's where we get into the setback issue and the requirement for the variance on that. And you mentioned you're ensuring that the existing vegetation, trees, shrubs located are going to be preserved.
Correct.
And then the fence, minimum height 6 feet, you, in your letter said 7 feet.
Correct.
In terms of accessory equipment, you're not envisioning any separate accessory structures, is that correct?
Well, as the carriers come on the tower, they'll put some platform and their ground equipment. So everything will be contained in the compound.
Okay. And then there's going to be an access road
Correct.
with, and I saw from your plans that there's a requirement of at least 2 off-street parking.
Yeah, there's plenty of space for that.
And again, there's going to be no physical or visual obstruction to pedestrian vehicular traffic based on the location being recessed behind trees, more adjacent to a railroad than anything.
Right, yeah.
And the rest of it's just some design regulations, which you need to get into based on your correspondence and indicating that you're going to be compliant with those.
Yep.
So, in terms of the permitted exception, that's.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all we have for you right now.
Thank you.
Township? Okay. Anyone from the audience? Just come on up, state your name and address.
I'm Mark Wells, 6440 Field Valley Lane, Fairview. And these other gentlemen will speak as well, but we're here representing the aviation community. I've been a pilot for over 40 years. Dave Benson here runs Fundamentals Flight School at the airport. And Andre Omolcheko is a certified instrument flight instructor. Although this may be a great location for a tower, the one thing that isn't considered are the users of the airport and the facility that's here. So what we like to do is point out that it's more than just a dot on the map. There's a dynamic infrastructure going on overhead that hasn't been considered at all. And while it may not protrude into the FAA approach corridor with the appropriate clearance, there are other factors to consider. So let's look at, and Dave may chime in here. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves now?
Yes. My name is Andre Omolchenko. I'm a certified flight instructor. I fly out of the Erie area mostly. Dave owns a school that I fly out of. We have a fly with students, teaching them how to fly, teaching them all the regulations, everything that goes into that, all the normal procedures that goes into that, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Is your name Andre?
Andre.
Could you state your address?
Yes, 4140 Dexter Avenue.
I'm David Benson. I'm the owner of Fundamentals Flight Training at the Erie Airport. I live at 703 Nevada Drive, Erie, PA, in Mill Creek. And then, yes, so I'm a commercial pilot as well as Andre here, and we're both flight instructors. He's more qualified than I am, so I brought him in. He's got his instrument instructor rating as well. But yeah, so yeah, this is the first thing that we want to show you guys.
I don't know if you can see this well, but to describe it, in the middle is the main runway of Erie Airport. And this is runway 6. The position of the tower is right here. These blue lines that you see around here, this is what's referred to as a, pardon me?
So, as you see, this is the Erie Airport. This is the longest runway. It's 8,000 and some feet long. This is what the commercial airlines use. It's used daily. This is a smaller runway right here, and it's 220, and this is used generally by smaller airplanes like the ones we use to train in. So this is the main runway right here. We use it daily, and you can see the proposed tower site is this red dot right here, and so this is the traffic pattern that not only we use and we teach at Fundamentals to we have 35 active students ranging from age from 17 years old. Actually, our youngest student is 13. He won't be able to get his license until he's 17, but that's our youngest student, and we have students that are 88 years old. So we have lots of students, and this is what we teach. So if they were to take off using runway 6, they'd take off, they'd be climbing, and the standard is to go left. So you see that they fly directly over this tower, and they circle back around, and so a big part of learning to fly is becoming proficient at landing. So if you guys have houses in this area right here, you definitely know that we fly over your house many, many times a day. And so it's just students practicing over and over again. And so that's standard. And then the same thing coming in. So when planes are coming in, if outside planes from other airports, they will enter this traffic pattern mid-field, so middle of the airport, at a 45-degree angle, which Mark, thank you for providing this. So they'll enter right here, and they will, this is the downwind, they'll turn in, and then they'll fly directly over the tower and make a landing at the airport.
If I could add, this standard traffic pattern is something that's in use in every airport in America with some changes. The concept of teaching students to do this, and it isn't just the 35 that are enrolled currently at fundamentals. Kent State sends students over here, High Flight in Butler County, and there's an airport in Ohio, East Ohio Regional. So there's a continual traffic of student pilots and instructors coming to this airport to learn to land this standard traffic pattern, which is done primarily with visual cues. The idea, and by the way, the pattern is standard in most airports. It's 1,000 feet above ground level. When you're abeam, the numbers or the threshold, and you're doing this by looking out the window and checking your instruments. You've slowed down, you're at the proper altitude, you're configured properly. It might include flaps and landing gear and other things. And you're preparing to make this turn when the airport's about 45 degrees behind you. By then, you've already lost 300 feet of altitude. And you're slow, too, so you have to be careful making this turn. Well, when you roll out on the turn, you should be looking at this runway to decide, am I too high, too low, too fast, too slow, and make adjustments accordingly. So you're looking at instruments, runway, instruments, runway. One of the issues we have here is that when you make this turn, all of a sudden you're going to be looking at a tower. Now, you may be above it, and matter of fact, when you make the turn to final, you'll be at about 500 feet above ground level, if you do it right. But the issue here is anybody flying into a tower, your attention is going to be distracted. You should be looking at your instruments and the runway, but instead you're focused on the tower. So now you're not looking at your instruments. Perhaps you drifted low, maybe you're too fast, you have to correct. So it throws off this visual picture that you're trying to learn in your mind to be able to make a successful approach to a safe landing. So that's the basic concept here. Do you want to chime in something, Dave?
Yeah. And additionally, every commercial airline that flies in, if they're using runway 6, they're going to be flying directly over this tower. Ideally, in perfect conditions, the tower's not going to get hit. But like I said, I have 17-year-old students. We train our students very well. So not necessarily our students, but other flight schools, other pilots from the area. They're going to be flying in. People make mistakes. There's variances in Erie. The weather can change drastically, which changes the altimeter setting.
Do you want to touch on that with the instrument approaches?
Yeah, we will.
So this is primarily visual.
Yep.
And does anyone have any
So you
questions?
said typically your approach is at 400 feet? Did I hear that right?
So right here, you're going to
elevation?
be perfectly, you're going to be 700 feet above the ground. Right here, you're going to be 400 feet above the ground. And so this is going to, as proposed, protrude from the ground 96 feet, which I'm assuming the other 4 feet will be the lightning tower and then the light at the top to make it the 100. So it's going to be 100, and then, so those are ideal conditions, but like Mark
But the
is.
concern is, I mean, partially the height, but partially the fact that it's a visual distraction.
It's a big
because, I mean,
visual distraction.
let's face it, some trees in that area, it's probably 70 or 80 feet, you know what I mean?
Well, and you know, the local pilots, we would learn what the height of a tower, the height of something, and, you know, you become accustomed to it. But when you have pilots coming from somewhere else that don't know the local area, they're going to see the tower and react by either altering course or altering altitude, even though they probably don't need to. So it is primarily a great visual distraction. And in the case of a student, they're supposed to be concentrating on watching the changing visual angles of this runway and their instruments. There's a lot going on there at the same time. Very dynamic atmosphere. So to have their attention distracted from that important focus by a tower that's in their visual field, that's just not a good thing.
If I may add, so what we teach when we fly this visual pattern here is we teach to establish what we call a stabilized approach, where the airplane is configured for landing and it's on its proper speed, it's at its proper power setting. If you do it right, you can really be almost hands-off and the plane will continue in that proper attitude. Now, what Mark is saying is that this distraction can cause that approach to become unstabilized. Now you have a distraction, now you have to make some sort of adjustment, you have to make a climb, you have to make a turn. This can result in an unstabilized approach. Now in aviation, there are many incidents and accidents that occur as a result of unstabilized approaches. You can see them on the news all the time. So eliminating that kind of distraction will help to eliminate unstabilized approaches.
I guess my main objection is just the location of this tower. It's, we fly, fundamentals alone, flies over this, directly over where this tower is gonna be 40 times a day. When the winds are correct and we're using runway 6. So it's just, having this location may be good for a cell phone tower service standpoint, but as far as the operation of an airport, it's pretty awful. That's what I'm going to describe it as.
You want to talk about altimeters and?
Yeah. So we mentioned that this traffic pattern is flown at 1,000 feet above the ground. Now, in the airplane, and especially the airplanes that we fly, we don't have anything that tells us how high above the ground we are. That is not a required piece of equipment. A required piece of equipment that we have tells us how high we are above sea level. And that instrument that we have also is adjustable based on the current barometric pressure at that location. So that barometric pressure is provided to us by the controllers at the airport. So we're always in communication with those controllers. They provide us the correct barometric setting that we have to be at. Now that is updated every hour or so, unless there are really huge changes in weather, but it is very possible that we could be doing a training flight, and before that setting is updated, we could be at the slightly incorrect barometric setting, which could put us off about 50 feet. Now 50 feet doesn't seem like as much just now, but keep that number in mind.
If I could add, we kind of talked through the variables with adjusting an altimeter, which reads height above sea level. So we have to keep two things in mind: height above sea level, or MSL, or height above ground level, AGL. And both of those are important when you're in a landing pattern. So a standard certified altimeter has a variance plus or minus 75 feet. So it's conceivable that somebody could be at the bottom of the range. Now, if the barometric pressure changes, and actually Andre went out and we flew this approach several times this week. The altimeter in that hour we were flying it changed by, what is it, from 2.955 to 2.952, it's 3 millibars. It's 30 feet. So it's conceivable that there could be 100-foot error in what the pilot sees on his altimeter and his actual height above ground. And I think that's pretty significant.
So your altimeter could be reading that you are at 1,100 feet, but you could actually be at 1,000 feet. And that is a possibility from day-to-day operations.
And the other thing is that's assuming that you get the barometric pressure and you change it, because it's only updated every hour. We were discussing an accident case in the Carolinas where the very experienced pilots didn't change it. They didn't set the altimeter to the current setting. And they were 200 feet below where they thought they were, unfortunately, when they hit the mountain. So it's, there's machines and are operated by humans, so there's possibility.
I'm assuming that's also if he was off 200 feet, that was when he was flying at 800 feet. Am I right to assume that?
He should have changed the altimeter setting to the current setting. That
You
was
change it,
clearly
but-
pilot error.
Understand, but I don't profess to understand your space at all. But I guess what I'm asking is, when you say he's off 200 feet and all these different things, is this a percentage basis? So when you're at 400 feet, if it's off a little, does it off by 40 feet or is off by 200 feet at that point?
How do you answer that? It depends, because
200 feet?
Yeah, so,
I mean, once you get really, really high,
there's a couple of factors.
Once you're really, really high, my point is not when you're
no, 200 feet.
800 feet.
For the purpose of this, 200 feet is going to be 200 feet. And so, like, I'm talking like Class A is where,
So to recap this, so that you understand, this setting on the altimeter, if you have this setting correct and your instrument is perfect, you will be at the altitude that you read on that instrument. So if everything is perfect and your instrument reads that you are at 1,100 feet, that is exactly where you are. Now, in a normal airplane, normal everyday scenario, that's not always the case. These altimeters have a legal FAA-approved variance of 75 feet. So they can be off as much as 75 feet and still be legal and approved for flight. Another thing is, as Mark was talking about, that change in that pressure setting, if that is not caught or addressed, now, again, we teach normal operations to always be on top of this and always be checking that, but it's not always the case where you are always perfect on that setting. If the setting were to decrease in the past 45 minutes, for instance, by just 0.05 of an inch of mercury, is a very small amount, that is still 50 feet of deviation. So right there, you could be 125 feet below what your altimeter is reading, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then another question I have for you is what was stated, and again, I have to get more info on this, but did this not have to go before an FAA review?
I'm sorry?
The gentleman who presented said this had to be put out for an FAA review. There was an FAA review period.
well,
One last thing I want to address is, so being an instrument instructor is what I am, so I teach, just a moment. I teach students how to fly both these visual patterns, and I teach them how to fly only by reference to the instruments inside the panel. I'm sure you guys have all been on, most of you have probably been on flights where you can't see anything outside, you're in the clouds, and you're wondering maybe, how does a pilot know where he's going? Well, they use all these instrumentation inside the airplane to be able to get themselves lined up with the runway on what I referred to before as a stabilized approach. So right here, as Dave is holding this white document, this is a government chart of an approach path that is published to this runway, to the runway. And this approach path is a three-dimensional path that the pilot will follow based on the instrumentation that they see in the panel. Now, it has a left and right course to it, and it is a wide course that gets narrower and narrower as you get closer to the runway. And it also has a vertical component called a glide path that also gets narrower and narrower as you get closer to the airport.
And we've
essentially,
plotted
this
that
is
on here.
the directions.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Dave?
This is essentially the directions that the pilot uses to find the runway when he can't see anything. So,
And we plotted that corridor. It's probably hard to see, it's in black, but it's a kind of a cone-shaped thing. It's about 700 feet wide at the threshold of the runway, and if you go out about 2 miles, it's about twice that distance. And the white line is the center line of that approach corridor. So a pilot operating and performing a proper approach could be anywhere in that cone. He's not going to be on dead center, especially if he's fighting crosswinds or something. And you can see the red dot, the tower's clearly under that. Now, I think, the approval that the FAA gave was that dot does not, or that tower doesn't protrude into the bottom of that three-dimensional slope. But, and Derek, I think, will address that more later.
So to continue on that, we did a little bit of math, and I'm not going to bore you guys too much numbers, but we did a little bit of math with how wide this approach course is and how tall this approach course is. At about 1 mile away, that's exactly where the tower is, about 1 statute mile away from the beginning of the runway. This vertical height of the glide slope is about 130 feet wide total. So you could be 65 feet if you are a little bit low on that glide path, which you can see on your indications. That's what we try not to do that. We want to be on that proper path, but If you are still on the course and you're a little bit below at the bottom of that course, you are about 65 feet below that course. Add that to the 75 feet of possible deviation of the altimeter and that possible deviation of the altimeter setting, that could very possibly put you really close to the top of that tower.
What is the bottom of that? I forget what you're calling it, but
So the,
you said it's 130 feet tall. What is the bottom of that, at the height, at the location of the tower?
the bottom, you mean like in feet above the ground?
Yes, feet above the ground.
Which is about the visual descent point. What would that height be?
So 65,100. So looking at, to answer that, here is a screenshot of a flight path of a regional jet, an airline that comes into this airport every day.
It's a Piedmont flight.
And this is public information, anyone can see this. And you can track the exact altitude of that airplane pretty close to in that exact location. And it shows that really close to the tower, this airplane is at 1,100 feet. Now, assuming that airplane is on a perfect glide path, 1,100 feet mean sea level is where that pilot is. Now, the tower is going to be 100 feet tall, and the elevation of the ground there is about 810 feet from our research. Add 100 feet to that, you get 910 feet. Now, now you have about 190 feet of distance. That makes sense? Now, if you factor in that 65 feet of that approach path, so now you could possibly be at 1,035 feet, okay, if you're at the bottom of that path. Now,
So the bottom of the path, just to break it into my layman's terms, bottom of the path, 1,035 feet
Just
over,
about.
off the ground?
yeah, 1,035 MSL above sea level.
Let's just
sorry.
talk in same terms. The tower's 100 feet above ground level.
Let's see.
What is the bottom of the
Math.
air path above ground level?
So that'll be 225 feet above the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're at the bottom of that path, which is still legal, by the way, for a published approach and for an airplane to be on that approach, that approach width is legal. If you end up getting a little bit below that, that's a situation where you want to conduct what you call a go-around, where the airplane powers up and it climbs away from the ground because it has become unstable, and then you want to retry this approach again. Now, you can still be within those parameters and believe that you are, and still be stabilized, but if you factor in that altimeter error of 75 feet, well, now we have 225 minus 75, you get 150 feet. You know, now you take a possible deviation of maybe 50 feet, which can happen on a normal day. You know, now you have 100 feet. So you can be uncomfortably close to that tower, in my opinion. Now, anybody else have anything before I summarize?
That may be happening while you're flying blind in clouds, not able to see the ground, which is an uncomfortable concept in my mind.
Okay.
I wanted to summarize with one last thing here, and you guys can chime in if you have anything else, but this still would provide you some clearance, you know, based on these numbers, and these are just kind of rough numbers that I did a little bit of research on. This will still, in theory, provide you some clearance, but what we teach, and I teach it as a flight instructor, and what we teach at the school is safety and eliminating unnecessary risks. So, has anyone ever heard of a Swiss cheese model? So a Swiss cheese model, pieces of cheese, Swiss cheese have holes in them, and when you line up enough of these in random order, you can in theory get a line that goes all the way through all the holes, and you can end up with an accident or incident. Each piece of cheese represents a sort of instance that can lead to an incident or accident. One of those could be being at the bottom of that approach path. Another one could be having an altimeter that is, you know, at the edge of its deviation. You can also have possible weather conditions that can cause you to descend uncontrollably. There can be a lot of these things that can line up randomly and can cause an airplane to be uncomfortably close or even be in the direct path of that tower. Now, most aviation accidents and incidents are blamed on what we call pilot error, which in part is true, but there are a lot of variables. There's a lot of pieces of Swiss cheese here that end up with this accident. It's usually a couple of little things that all line up perfectly that end up with an incident or an accident. And eliminating this tower will help to eliminate one of those risk factors, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, how many flights a year emanate out of Erie Airways for student pilots?
Oh.
It's got to be a lot, because I have a friend who lives down here on Millfair Road, and I watch him go over every night. I must see 40 flights a night, so.
Yeah,
Is that
there's
right?
a lot. I don't know a number. Mr. Derek Martin might know a number. I'm not entirely sure, but definitely a lot.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a
every
lot.
day there's a lot. Yeah.
7 days a week, sun up to sundown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Derek, excuse me. Derek Martin, Erie Airport, 1441 12th Street, Erie, Pennsylvania. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my outburst a second ago. I interrupted their speaking, and that was rude, and I wanted to apologize to the committee. As you can tell, these gentlemen are very passionate about what they do, and they're passionate about safety. They're passionate about people and the environment. Mr. Tanner, earlier you asked the question about trees obstructions. There are trees obstructions at the Erie Airport, and every year the state of Pennsylvania comes out and they do obstruction lists that we are required to remove to maintain safety. And so the trees that you mentioned are at 80 feet. Most likely some of those are starting to protrude into the navigable airspace. I'm going to try to not talk technical. I think these guys did a pretty good job of that. I just want to talk about what I see. First of all, Mr. Benson didn't tell you the whole story. This gentleman has worked with Gannon University to start a flight school. They're working on trying to start an A&P mechanic school at the airport to make the airport a viable place for people in this region to get an education and go out and get a good job. They also do that in Edinburgh, Penn West, and they do it, I believe, at 2 other universities providing flight training for students. Vital to the future growth of aviation in this country. Both pilots are very passionate what they're talking about. There's a regulation that they're not familiar with. It's called Part 77. You can Google. It's an FAA regulation that talks about imaginary surfaces on an airfield, okay? If you indulge me for a second, I'll just read a very short paragraph and give you the 5 components of that. Part 77, surfaces are imaginary 3D geometric zones established around an airport to protect navigational airspace from physical obstructions. Any construction of natural growth that penetrates these surfaces, such as trees that you mentioned, requires official notification in aeronautical studies to the Flight Safety Department. As I was sitting there, the gentleman that testified on behalf of the organization he works for made a few comments that stuck out at me. He used the term RFAA. I don't know what RFAA means. The FAA is a federal agency, should have nothing to do with his company. So as the documents that he prepared are not consistent. We've had a great relationship with the planning department for years. This question was asked about being notified. We were not notified by the FAA, and we were not notified by Mayo Creek initially. Mr. Wells is the one that brought this to my attention. After talking to Matt Puzz and Matt Waldinger, I asked what happened because I typically get notification. He says I was outside the zone where we typically do that. Nobody's fault, it happened. I don't think this was formally looked at by the FAA. The gentleman also mentioned 150 feet. That the FAA would approve for a tower. The numbers don't jive. So it was mentioned earlier that in the documentation you have, it says 96 feet throughout the whole document. It didn't take into account, which was mentioned earlier, the 4 feet for the antenna. And if it's over a certain height, you have to have a light. So it's not 96 feet. So we sent the recommendations to the planning department for them to give to the developer. Just to let you know, the airport gets contacted all the time about using our property for towers. And we asked the location that they were going to go into, and the majority of the times it penetrates the Part 77 surfaces, and then we deny it. And we love to have their money, but we're more concerned about safety than money. So these are recommendations that we sent over. It says we do not see a reference to the pole ground elevation that is necessary to understand the top of the tower height. We assume 745 feet. In your previous review, a tower elevation shown on T1 is 894. That is a penetration of the Part 77. This does not seem to line up with the rest of the information provided. 3, as I just mentioned, the tower is referenced to be 96 throughout. There is an additional 4 feet for lightning rod, and there should be airspace review as to the highest point of obstruction light is needed. So an airspace review is what the FAA does to make sure that there's no issues with the product or services. We've also been working with the planning department, possibly a solar farm at the airport. I received the variance or requirements from Matt. A solar farm that's ground mounted requires an airspace review. I don't think this is in that documentation. So the numbers in the documentation and what was communicated are inconsistent with what is needed to be approved by the FAA. So the FAA hadn't contacted me. I'm on speed dial from the Harrisburg office, the flight safety office in Pittsburgh. Not one organization at the FAA has contacted me about this project. So I have major concerns that when the term RFAA is used, it wasn't the FAA. So I haven't seen the documentation of what was provided, but those are my comments. You might have had other questions earlier. I'd be able to answer it if you so choose, or I might have already answered it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Just
And the number of operations that operate at the airport on an annual basis is about 24,000 between general aviation, military, and commercial traffic.
The gentleman representing the tower, would you go up for?
And one question, Mr. Martin. I guess in other scenarios when these types of projects are presented, does the FAA contact you or the airport directly, typically?
I've never been contacted by the FAA about the tower. The tower people contact us. We do our due diligence of where we think we can zone a tower. We had somebody most recently in the same area ask for a tower. They didn't like the spot we said that they could put it in, and then they disappeared.
Thank you.
My question is, how many other sites were selected for this tower, other than the one that you're township?
This was the only one.
That's it?
But can I respond to a couple of things?
Yeah.
I mentioned RF maps. I think you think I meant RFAA maps of some kind. No, it's two different things. RF stands for radio frequency. We provide maps from my carrier clients that show what the current hole in this coverage system is, and then what, if the tower were to go up, what the coverage would be. That's to prove the need for the site. That's what I was talking about. I didn't say RFAA. That's not. I don't know if you've seen the FAA approval that I've got at 154. I've submitted it to the township. when I got the objection from Mr. Puz that the Erie Airport objected, I was at a loss. I was like, oh, we got the FAA approval. I presume the FAA contacted the airport. So my FAA consultant called the FAA and said, what gives? We're getting negative feedback from the airport. They sent us documentation that they sent the information to the airport. There's a certain period of time that they get feedback, and then they come out with their ruling. So I don't know where the disconnect was there. As tower builders, we always apply for FAA, and we're going to do it again at 100 feet. So I presume, because at the lower height, that'll change the lighting requirements. So if approved, we're going to apply again to the FAA, and presumably they're going to contact the airport, and I believe you'll have discussions. And if it's deemed that it's going to be harmful or interfere with, we don't want to build a tower that's going to be unsafe. And so why don't we follow the law? And the law is that we have to apply to the FAA, get them to rule on the height of the tower, which we did, but now we're going at a different height. Let's do it again. And if I'm sure there's going to be dialogue with the FAA, and if the FAA comes back and says, no go at this location, I will accept that, and because I don't want to build a tower that's unsafe. But I believe it's safe because the FAA said we can go at 154. This is the lighting requirement. These are goodwill gentlemen. I'm not going to fence with them on mathematics because I'll lose. So I'm going to just agree that what they're saying is truth. But I hear a lot of what ifs. What if this? Swiss cheese, you know. Why don't we let the law, FAA handle it? They're the experts, and I'm going to apply again. Because I would like to make that a condition of approval, that I submit another FAA approval at 100 feet, and then we let the FAA make the call.
As an alternative to that, I mean, the other thing that we could do too is we could, I guess, if everybody's agreeable, is we could table this to, I don't know how long the process is for FAA to review.
It could be lengthy, yeah, it could be lengthy. However, we're not going to buy any materials or move the ball forward in any way until we get the results from the FAA, because they could kill the site, and I don't intend to waste any money on engineering or anything until we get that feedback from the FAA.
And it's not necessarily, the FAA, they make a determination. It's not necessarily an approval or denial. It's just, at least according to this, it was just, they came back with a report that said that there was no substantial adverse effect.
Right, that's what we get, and we have to have that in the record to move forward with the development of the tower. We do that for every site we build.
Your understanding of the process is you make the request to FAA then reaches out to the airport and receives feedback from the airport.
Correct.
And then makes their report. And then Mr. Martin, if you could step up for 1 second, just to. Sorry.
No problem.
Have you talked to the FAA subsequent to this to ask them about the approval that they had previously given?
No, so I actually thought when this was coming up again tonight, that the recommendations that we provided to the planning department were provided to the organization that was trying to build the structure. So it sounds like they're trying to get approval on what was previously submitted, and what was previously submitted we think is incorrect. So I would be interested in understanding what FAA office they talked to, the personnel, so we can follow up with them. Because we can follow up and understand what they're saying, because it's inconsistent with what we have in front of us.
Okay. Could you step back up for a second?
I believe I have that information. I believe I've submitted it.
I was going to say, has that information
Yeah.
been submitted to the township?
Yeah, because when we approached the FAA and said, what's going on here? They said, you know, this is what we do, this is who we contacted, and
Yeah.
so I believe I provided that. I could send it again if it's not enough.
I think the best course, like you were starting to mention, if everyone was in agreement, if we would table this till we have that dialogue, and he's talked to the FAA and everyone's on the same page, because I don't know if it's not the right type of approval or whatever it is, but it's very peculiar that the FAA would not consult the person who runs the local airport. and that was at a much higher number.
Correct.
50% higher number almost.
Right. So you're asking if we can table it?
I guess if we would, and
Rather than making it a condition
Right.
for the FAA approval,
I think there's too many variables at hand with respect to a conditional approval with respect to that issue. I mean, I think we're all on the same page that, you know, the health, safety of the citizens is paramount.
Correct.
Now, in terms of time frame, I mean, we don't have a definitive time frame as to when that process will, I guess, conclude. You mentioned that it could take some time, but there's no, like, I guess, specific framework. They don't have, like, you know, 30 days, 60 days.
Correct.
in which-
Yeah, depends on their workload. We get slotted in where we get fit in there, and if they're busy with other things, government shutdown, we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, technically, it is a condition of what we need to approve, so we'd be doing it on condition anyway. So technically, it should be something that is part of this package, and you're not going to move forward without it anyway.
Correct.
So we would, I could say that myself, and
We'll make a motion to table this at this time, or?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be that, but then we'd probably have to get some type of formal waivers from you, just confirming, because there is certain timeframes that we have within which to rule an adjudication, and based on what you're telling us, there's no way that we would be able to get that. So, and we can talk about it and, I guess, agree on the record now as to what we would be looking at in terms of that timeframe. So, I mean, would we, I guess, would you be amenable to something, because I guess you would then report, I guess, seek a new report from the FAA based on the proposed project as it has been applied for based on this permit, which, you know, the current report that we have back was based on a prior submission, correct?
At a taller, same location at a taller height.
Right, taller height.
So presumably, it's going to pass.
Right, presumably it's gonna pass, but I guess there's also going to be that feedback from, and communication between FAA and Erie International Airport that was, I guess, somehow missed. And so, I guess, if we extend it out for that time period for the results from the FAA, from your next application to the FAA, and then we have a hearing within, I guess, 30 days of that. And that, again, presumes that FAA and Erie International Airport will have that communication.
Correct. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you okay, I guess, and then, you know, waiving any requirements associated with the Municipal Planning Act and our zoning hearing ordinance, or zoning ordinance, I should say, with respect to timeframes, to allow for that process to unfold?
I can put that on letterhead and send it to planning. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah.
That way, I guess we can go through this process, because I think there's been some concerns obviously raised that need to be further investigated.
Understood.
okay.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take a recess and be back shortly.
Oh, yeah.
I was leaving it open, but
Yeah.
that's, yeah, you can, yeah, we'll leave it open right now. But, I mean, it will be open for subsequent, but if you'd like to comment at this time.
Sure, I may not be able to come on the future
Sure.
date, whatever that may be, and it's just complete coincidence that I'm here. My name, again, for the record, is Tim Clan, at 4969 Wattsburg Road. Deeply involved with the airport, so it's a coincidence. And my son's a pilot. He has done extensive training at the school. I've sat in the plane every chance I can get. And Dave Benson said, I think 14 years old was his earliest student now. He was a student at 12. So he had to solo, and I do have some numbers too to correct. So the number of civil operations at the airport in 2024 was 14,707 by the Airport Authority's own documentation on their website. 2025, it's over 15,000. And these are students. Some of them are rusty pilots. Some of them have obstacles. They say they see a tower, I've been on numerous landings where an instructor says tower in sight, and they're focusing on different towers. There's a lot going on at the airport. There's speeds, there's everything to maintain, and none of it is automated. These planes, my son flies a 1965 airplane. Legal, inspected every year by the FAA. Instruments do not need to be accurate within a margin. The FAA sets those margins. I don't know how often they review them. They are looking into that. There was a 75-foot margin, plus or minus, on altimeters. That is the leading cause of the crash in Washington, D.C. First commercial airplane crash and fatal crash because they crashed into a military helicopter who had an inaccurate altimeter. The FAA is perfect, some say. Others say it's underfunded or stuck in their old ways. People can make their own opinions of that, but they're trying to do sweeping changes. I go every year to a national safety conference that's operated by the FAA called Communicating for Safety. So I've heard a lot about the Swiss cheese model, and I know it from commercial flying and civil flying and student flying. My son landed 22 times and took off 22 times from the Erie airport on that exact path over the Walmart before his 16th birthday to get better at it in order to solo on his 16th birthday. So it's definitely a cause, and even if you're a pilot with thousands of hours, if you have some other alert or alarm, you're not always looking over, especially at night. Now, if the FAA ruled that the current location was safe or without this type of public input, it's also important that the proposed variance, the board now has a chance to review this, or they will at the future date. But the proposed variance actually, regardless of height, it puts the flight path, the tower, if that variance is approved, puts the airplanes, and this is optimally, if the airplane's not making a mistake or doing a wide approach, it puts them 115 foot closer to the tower. That's horizontally to the tower. So if the tower, there's also a chance that the FAA knows that what the zoning requirements are. So the FAA may have also focused part of their study or their future study on what the current laws and current zoning conditions are for property lines. So I wanted to say that basically everything, the tower position, the distance to runway, the missed approaching, and the safety margin, if you can do something to help make the margins better than the minimum, that's going to make aviation safer. A lot of money spent to relocate people for runways and things like that, businesses and homes near the Erie Airport over the past decade. And now there's an opportunity some of the towers just have to be dealt with. They're already on the map, they're already loaded, and nobody's going to fund moving them. But this is one that could possibly find a different location or work within the current zoning laws without using a variance.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'd make one more comment that I thought Derek was going to mention. We were referring to that IFR approach chart for runway 6. It's the instrument landing system. There's what are called approach minimums, and in this case, it's 982 feet. The pilot can descend to 982 feet, and that's the point where he must do a go-around if he doesn't see the runway environment. So he could be in the clouds at 982 feet and see nothing and do a go-around. Now, the weather minimums are required to be no lower than that, or he can't start the approach to begin with. One of our fears is that if the FAA later decides, well, maybe this tower is a problem after all, and they decide to raise the approach minimums for runway 6, that's going to bring into play a number of airlines that will no longer be interested in looking at Erie because the minimums are higher. They would risk bringing a plane full of people to Erie, not being able to execute approach, and have to go to Pittsburgh or somewhere else and put them on buses. So there would obviously be a losing flight. So there's an economic aspect to this that I think is also very important, just thinking long term.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to take a recess. Okay, let the record show we reconvened approximately 8:10 on Appeal 26-16, Thomas J. Weiss. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
I second that motion. All in favor? Aye. So moved. On Appeal number 26-17, Joseph Caulfield. I'll make a motion to approve on the condition that the bedroom windows are moved from the west to the south or the rear of the addition.
I second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. So moved. 26-18, Erie City Mission. I make a motion to approve.
I second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. So moved. 26-12, we are going to table that until 30 days after the FAA approval. Solicitor will be in contact to secure the necessary waivers for timeframe. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I second that motion.
No, make a
I
motion.
make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. So moved. Yep.